very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
It's a beautiful morning from here in Lagos. I am Kayode Okikiolu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to the show.
And good morning from Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun-Yusuf.
Well, the PTF on COVID-19 continued their briefing, and they did speak about certain things. Well, there's been some questions about the processes, the procedures, the lockdowns, how we've eased it, how we are carrying out or adhering to those lockdowns. But it'll be interesting to hear this again, or to hear it, if perhaps you might have missed it, the perspective of the chairman of PTF on COVID-19.
Let me also...
The chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Boss Mustafa, leads the day's briefing, noting the consistent rise in the number of confirmed cases in the country. He informs the gathering that the government will not hesitate to change its decisions, even as he urges citizens to key into a national prayer and fasting program against COVID-19.
One significant observation the PTF wishes to make is the new rise in cases are to be expected as nations start to ease restrictions. That is the picture all over the world. We shall, however, proceed with caution, and we shall not hesitate to change course when the need arises.
So that was the big one. Many thinking, whoa, okay. Yes, they heard it, but what does it mean to people? How do they internalize that? It's different. Does that mean we could possibly go back to a lockdown? Can we afford that when we go to, given the initial reasons that they gave why we're easing this lockdown, such that businesses won't crumble or collapse on us? I mean, after all, the stimulus packages that they've announced differently. Take power, for instance. You know what is being said now. They're even talking about increasing the electricity tariff, which has been deferred to a later date, postponing the evil day, many might add. But the figures now, a little over 626 latest cases for COVID-19. And as of Tuesday, the NCDC boss did say about 812 health workers have tested positive to COVID-19. So sometimes you just wonder, the way these figures appear, does it appear as though we've thrown our hands up in the air, saying, well, look, this is what it is. If we don't comply, if we don't change our behavior, we may just get a lot more going down, especially when you wonder, where will this cure come from?
Oof. I mean, some are saying months, years. For some people, they're not even looking that way. They're saying, you know what, forget that cure. Let's fix what we can with what we have right now. But, something we have said over time, which, points to the fact that we need to keep saying this, is the fact that people might not really catch on until after a while. I mean, you talk about advertising, the fact that you have to keep showing them that product until some point they think, oh, wait, maybe I need to buy this product. The same way, the same way the PTF has consistently come out, to put out these messages. In fact, sometimes you're like, I heard this last week, I heard this yesterday. But that's the point. Some people will not catch on until you hear this over and over again. But then I like the fact that yesterday they took another dimension, try to show, the fatality, for example, paint a picture. That wasn't the first time, by the way, but at least for some people, it was the first hearing it. 3 out of 5 people that die are 50 and above. But the interesting thing is 20 to 40s are the ones affected the most. So basically saying 20s to 40s are the ones bringing in, a whole lot of the infections, but 50s and above are the ones bearing the brunt, as it were. So that sort of paints a picture that way. I need to take responsibility. And the NCDC DG was talking about the needs to protect the elderly. So maybe if some people hear it in that sense, they think, okay, I need to protect my parents, so I need to take responsibility, or I need to protect that elderly person. So maybe that will be a good reason for some people to take responsibilities. But something that also hit me is the fact that it was said that our laboratories are not being utilized to their maximum capacity. Now, how many times have we heard this in power, in our economy, in human capital? We keep hearing our potential and the reality. It's a trend, obviously, but I'm just hoping that with COVID-19, we're going to fix that, and then that will maybe, just maybe, ripple through all the other sectors. But one thing is clear, we have to keep saying this. We have to keep saying it.
That's what people learn.
When we talk about the number of states and the number of cases in each state, it sounds very distant to the man in Mushin. Okay, Tebi is Lagos, but let's break it down. Just how many days ago, weeks ago, very, very recently, the PTF COVID-19 informed us that 18 local governments in the whole of Nigeria account for 60% of all cases. in Lagos, 11 out of its 20 local government accounts for 60% of its cases. And I think it was just yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Lagos state government was mentioning specific local governments. Lagos Mainland, Koshofe is one of those. In fact, they even mentioned that about two or three local governments, they don't have any cases, or they have very, very few cases. Have we checked all? Maybe that's another. I think we need to bring this home very quickly. I was watching our program yesterday night, coronavirus update. And the anchor was asking, the guest, look, what if we lock down specific local governments? It's going to be a very tricky thing. How are you going to lock down a few local governments when we still have movement, around of that? But it was just something that, someone asked just to bring the issue home. But the truth of the matter is, maybe we should bring it closer home. Maybe when we know that it's on so-so street, maybe then people will know how serious this thing is, but then it will probably be, making it a little too pedestrian. But that's the reality that we find ourselves in. Is it now a problem of communication? There is absolutely nobody in Nigeria that doesn't know that there is such a thing as information. We all have it. There is such a thing as coronavirus disease, but how do we connect with the reality of it? That's a very, very tricky thing. All levels of authority are doing everything that they can. As the NCDC has reportedly appealed, it is our responsibility. We have our masks, but unfortunately, if we had to wear masks on set, I don't know how it will look really, but that's just the tricky thing. So please, let us take responsibility. I don't even know how more or better to emphasize this. Mark.
Well, I don't know if really we are looking forward to the federal government, reversing the lockdowns. I think that once or twice that question was posed to the chairman of the PTF. And I think he said quite categorically that lockdowns were not an option anymore. In fact, what he did say was that they were looking towards precision lockdowns. But maybe as at that time, the trend of the figures were not as alarming as we're seeing them. Just 2 days ago, we had over 700 people being infected by the virus. And this is all still saying that the laboratories are not being used to full capacity. Now, for that, some people will say that, the question will be, has the NCDC changed its guidelines for testing? Because some people are claiming that they have called those numbers and they're not getting their results. Someone sent us a mail saying that, he went to a collection center to have a sample taken, and as we speak, he hasn't seen his results. So there's still questions in terms of how we're managing the mechanics or the logistics for testing. That is on the one hand. They say they're hoping to spread around more the collection centers. Does it mean that any Nigerian, whether or not you have come in contact with someone who was positive, can go to a testing center and say, I'd just like to know what my status is? Because I think a lot of Nigerians would like to know, especially those who have been up and about, would like to know, just what their status is. And, don't forget that just before the lockdown was eased, a number of companies wanted to know for their employees if they could do, a test, even though the NCDC DG was saying that that's no guarantee, that the fact that they're negative today or they test negative today doesn't mean that they couldn't come down with the illness tomorrow if they do not take the precautions. But at least if you know that your employees are clear, you know that what you need to do is to be very strict in terms of what happens within your environment. Or if as much as possible, you can ensure that people are kept in a safe place because they have to come to work, that also could also be an option. But, while they work out the modalities for, ensuring that more and more people get tested, let us see what happens in that regard. Now, with regards to people taking responsibility, I know that the NCDC DG also did talk about some advert he saw in Edo State where he talked about the elderly, our pride. That's the new messaging. I've been saying that for a while. Perhaps we need to change the messaging that we currently have. Let us look at, specific demographics, for instance. People are still asking, why is it that 70% or from the number of infections that we're seeing right now, 70% of them are men and 30% are women. We have not been able to answer concretely what precisely is responsible for that. If it is something, in the bodies of men, then maybe we should inform them. If it's that they are a little more reckless than the women, then maybe we should also find a messaging that suits them. Let us find out what is responsible for that sort of attitude, and find a way to send a message in that says, look, you guys are not immune from this. In fact, if you look at most of the fatalities we have seen in the last couple of days, the prominent fatalities which have been announced, they have been mostly that of men. And I think that should worry, that should worry the authorities, because we're creating, breadwinners are losing their lives. This will definitely have a socio-economic impact on the lives of those people who depend on them for a living. So I don't know. I just know that the battle ahead is tough, especially for the fact that we have decided to ease lockdowns. It seems that it's now to your tent, O Israel. And I think that the message of personal responsibility cannot be stressed enough. The fact that now it will seem you're on your own. If you go out there, you have to ensure that you continue to take responsibility, not just for yourself, but for those around you. I sincerely hope that this message is sinking in. Gentlemen.
Well, please don't go to your tent, Israel, yet, because that might just be a lot more catastrophic if we don't have any of those guidelines to attend to. But the thing is, if you look at those figures, 20 to 40, I think you need to get your targeted, take responsibility message now that you've seen those figures. So that bracket, please, you need to take more responsibility, because figures don't lie today. So that's the way it's come across now. So now you know, look, this, you don't expect the police to say, hey, how old are you? What? Come here. No, that's not going to happen.
And we can also say, let's protect our men, since men seem to be getting more of this case. So we can say, let's protect our men.
Well, you know how it is. They have to get the bread for the day. They have to go out and do some of those things. Not an excuse, really. Yeah. Nothing.
But even though, some scientists say that there is something in the genes that make that to be. But then...
So there you go. It's new. So we discover new things every day. So you may say something today, and the next minute, they discover something, wait a minute, that what you said a few minutes ago is subjected now to this new information, and so to some extent, it may not be correct. But that said, let's get to the dailies and see what's going on there. Let's take you through some of the dailies today. Vanguard, COVID-19. FG goes spiritual. Allies. No, I'll go again. FG goes spiritual. Allies can. NSCIA on prayers, fasting. Sultan, can President urge Muslims, Christians to pray, fast for 3 days. We're not getting enough samples, PTF. Well, your 3 day can be any 3 day, really. Okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be, at the same time for the entire country. But if that's what they want, 3 days is 3 days, really. And then look at this other one. Passengers who sneeze on board will be treated as COVID-19 cases, says Aero. Let me see. Says Aero Airline, and then Kano completely lifts lockdown. Okay, you didn't mention the part where Aero also said, okay. I'll let you see now. Maybe when you read the story.
Open the pages.
Oh, are you talking about the footpath?
Nope. You just never know until I finish if I didn't finish the statement, you can only think. Yeah, that's the way it works, isn't it? And it's not like my statement is published in the dailies where you can go read it, no? So I'll stop there at the moment. But look at some other headlines now. Remember the fuel price hike, which we talked about some time ago, and thought, how is this eventually going to go down with several people if it's going to be dependent upon the fluctuating fuel price and the vagaries of that sector? Look at this now. NLC, ULC, others reject fuel price hike, demand reversal, say it will kill businesses, worsen poverty level, as PPPRA gives reasons for new price regime. So that's what you get there, because even different things now, they're hiking prices. I see where. But then there's a little bit of politics here. Edo governorship, APC unleashes Oyegun, Oshomole, Ganduje, 46 others against Obaseki. So that's what they say here. Don't worry, maybe they might unleash the same thing on Nigeria's economy. Same strategy, you never can tell. So don't be hasty on that one. Oh yeah, look at Mr. and Mrs. this time. Mr. somewhere just says, dear, I don't like the look of these pieces of goat meat. Are you sure it wasn't slaughtered? No. Are you sure it was slaughtered in your presence? I hope the animal didn't have COVID-19. Then Mrs. says, well, I didn't check, but next time I'll make sure the one slaughtered wore a face mask. Maybe the animal would not take personal responsibility, or the owner will help it take it. Look at the back page of Vanguard Sports today. Chelsea legend Leboeuf slams Blues over West Ham defeat. Everybody wants to win, don't they? But everybody can't win. That's the way it is. That's the stark reality. Oh, yesterday, for instance.
Oh, can we move on
Yes,
to other stories?
Yeah, move on to the results. 4-0, unfortunately. Yes, they're champions, but there was pride to play for. Don't forget that. And then, multi-choice may not renew EPL UEFA broadcast rights. Yeah, so you need to read the story and know, get information so you can plan how you want to proceed. And good to know Djokovic's wife tests negative for coronavirus. So you see, they were positive, reported, and now, so, damn, that's what you see these days. It's good to see this one anyway. That's Vanguard today.
Well, to tell you, sports people have much stronger immunity, but you know what? Chemele said it's a new virus, so a lot of things change by the minute. But let's take a look at...
a lot more sports then.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. But take a look at the Nigerian Tribune this morning. The big story in politics. Buni-led committee visits Tinubu, Bisi Akonde. Does that change the narrative now? You see, it's on page 31, and there's a picture to that effect, just in case you're wondering, did it really happen? But right under that, this sad one, Ondo Health Commissioner dies. Government says 193 Almajiri have tested positive in Kano. So obviously, this war is not over yet. You see more riders, customs officers test positive in Lagos. Government hospitals converted to sample collection centers in Abuja. Is lockdown not the end of coronavirus battle? So that's coming from the PTF. So yeah. It's on page 4. Right on top of the nameplate, you see NLC kicks against new petrol pump price. Demand reversal to old price. Set timeline to fix refineries. You know, a lot of people are saying, during the Occupy Nigeria protests, I think the price of petrol was increased to 141, thereabouts, and then black market 200, and people said they were going to hit the streets. And here you have the price of petrol even above that. And we'll see what plays out in the coming days, really. But you find more details on page 26. Right next to that, PDP dissolves Southwest Caretaker Committee, screens 9 aspirants for Ondo Guber primaries. It's on page 31. And house rent agreement, CFO others to carry stamp duty. That's right. It's coming from the FIRS. So no more just a receipt or, oh, I got the alert. You can move into the house now. Apparently things might change.
CFO to carry what? Stamp duty?
Well, so it's on
House
page
rents
26.
to carry stamp duty.
Yeah.
That's an increase coming, right?
Yeah, you have to put extra on it. So
Who's going to be paying that stamp duty? The landlord or the tenant?
Page 26 of the Nigerian Tribune. Finally, let me just take you through sports. Leicester won't give up. Iheanacho. And see this one, Atletico trail Chukwueze. That's right. The same Chukwueze might be going to Atletico. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
The Guardian newspaper has this one, 595.65 billion naira Lekki deep sea port courts trouble. That's the lead. What does that mean, really? Find out the details on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Continues on page 6, how lack of rail link road threatened project's success. Plan underway to connect facility, government affirms. Of course, more details in the paper. That picture is that of the First Lady commiserating with the former First Lady of Oyo State, the demise of her husband. Fixed refineries, stakeholders challenge government. That's the angle that the Guardian took to the story. How new pump price worsens citizens' woes. PDP, Labour, others kick, insist on total deregulation. FG refutes report on dirty fuel and a higher price change to regain lost 10 billion naira equity, say marketers. Find more details on the front page, continues on page 6. Among other stories on the front page, right under that 1. We don't know Boko Haram's sponsors, says Defense Headquarters. The details of that you'll find on the inside pages, page 3 in particular. That's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Well, let's quickly take a look at Leadership Friday for you. And you see right there, federal government, well, it has COVID-19 on the top. Federal government goes tough on hospitals over neglect of routine health services. Medical directors will pay for negligences, according to the minister. Says Nigerians dying from lack of attention. Mandates all public hospitals to collect coronavirus samples. Declares Madagascar herbs, same as Artemisia annual plant, grown in Nightbreed Farm. Insists schools have not resumed. WHO urges strong air travel safety measures in Africa. Ondo Health Commissioner dies. Governor's wife tests positive for virus. And Ganduje eases lockdown in Kano. So you find all of those stories underneath the major one. Federal government goes tough on hospitals over neglect of routine health services. But looking at other stories, you see that Lagos set for a showdown over fuel price hike. Price review based on market realities, according to the Triple PRA. Now the question is, where were they when they were saying that they have removed subsidies, and that now going to depend on what happens?
Yeah, but unfortunately, we may have to take it from there as well, because Daily Times does, and still on that fuel price matter. Look at the lead now. NLC rejects increase in price of petrol, demands immediate reversal. It's grand mischief, deceit. PDP says APC lacks sympathy. So at some point, it was always going to get to this, and this is not even the highest these prices may go if they continue going that route, which they already are. Nigerians must take responsibility in COVID-19 fight, says FG. Yeah. And then Nigerian army will remain apolitical, professional, Burutai pledges. Many will rather will also say, well, okay. And then they have several other stories. Courts rejects Rivers' request for interim stoppage of police fund deductions. ICRC attracts $8 billion investment through PPP arrangements. So they've got a lot of things going on here. But that part of the airports where they're saying we should have stringent measures for airport guidelines in Africa. There's a little bit of story on the airport here too. It says, Minister bars VIPs, aides from entering airports. So you may need to put that in context and find out, is it entering before or when flights resume, VIPs, everybody, you have to be subjected to some of these strict processes. Who knows? So there you go. So that's what you find there. That is Daily Time today, which ends a look at some of the papers here today. We're back in just a moment. Do stay with us. Well, there you go. The back and forth concerning this 774,000 jobs. But yes, it has since been suspended as directed. No, let me put it this way. The National Assembly has said this should be suspended. But then, what was all of this about? Yes, you heard the huge part of it, the processes, procedures, the legal perspectives, the political considerations. Well, we'll have two gentlemen to weigh in on this matter. Ohenovo Otemu and Emmanuel Anene are both legal practitioners. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Otemu. From your understanding of how all of this played out, what do you think?
Well, my own view about the whole thing is that tempers were high, which was totally unnecessary. The outburst was totally unwarranted. And again, you can see this from the perspective of somebody feeling you want to disgrace me before the public, particularly Mr. Festus Keyamo, the minister. You know, at the moment he got to the National Assembly, discussions have started, and aspersions has been casted. Statements tending to show that someone is trying to be corrupt had been made. So it was incumbent on him. He saw it as a responsibility to defend himself, to try to explain to the world also, because when those explanations were made, when those accusations were made, all the cameramen were seated, were in the hall. So he felt after making those accusations on his person, he should also respond also before the camera as to his position with the project, that he is not corrupt, he has not hijacked the project. Probably he wanted to explain the position of the law with respect to his powers as the minister before the cameras. But I think the National Assembly members didn't see it that way. They felt, no, at this point, so many things will come to the air, so let's go into a session that will exclude the cameras. So both sides somehow have issues. So for me, it would have been right, to have been proper, to have allowed Mr. Festus Keyamo, the minister, to explain himself also in the presence of the camera. Because, of course, if they go into executive session, cameras will no longer be there. And once cameras are not there, it will not be what you said and what you did not say. Hearsay, so many stories will not be on the air as to his credibility. So he felt he needed to defend his credibility also because the accusations were made against him before the cameras. And that, for me, was the position.
Okay, but Ms. Anana, so having heard that perspective, do you share the same thoughts, or for those who might have misunderstood what transpired on the day, because they're really different perspectives?
Thank you, Chamberlain, and once again, good morning, Nigerians. What transpired on the floor of National Assembly on that very day is pathetic, it's uncalled for. National Assembly has the right to determine their own procedure, and that is provided for in Section 60 of 1999 Constitution as amended. So if you don't go to National Assembly to determine the procedure to be adopted by National Assembly in carrying out their constitutional responsibilities, if you read Section 89 of 1999 Constitution as amended, this section empowered the National Assembly to extract evidence from anybody appearing before it in any way it felt desirable and necessary. These are constitutional provisions. So when National Assembly told Festus Keyamo or made insinuations that they will go into executive section, that is acting within the purview of the power given by the Constitution to the National Assembly members. If from the video clip we watched, there was a woman that asked Festus Keyamo, what is the performance indicators of this project? How do we now measure the success of this project? I don't think that is an accusation. What Festus Keyamo would have done is to go to National Assembly with policy documents, and that would readily answer the question. And let me remind Nigerians that fair hearing means an opportunity to be heard, and not to be heard in a particular way you feel it is necessary. So Festus Keyamo did what we call contempt ex facie. That is contempt before the court. That is what he did. You don't go to court. Even if your case before the court, you feel that the trial judge does not have the jurisdiction to entertain the matter. You don't speak to the trial judge in that way. You conduct yourself in an orderly manner. Even the American Secretary of State for Defense cannot speak to those people in the Capitol Hill in that manner, talking to them as if to say that you are classmates. That is unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's contempt. And let me remind Nigerians once again, it's not an interactive section. We make mistakes about so many things. We model a lot of things up. It is an investigative hearing, wherein you will be on oath. If you say anything that turns out to be lie, it is perjury. It's not you discuss, I discuss. An interactive section. And that is why they have reduced our constitution. That is why they have reduced themselves. But I don't blame Festus Keyamo. I blame the National Assembly themselves for the president of the Senate to say anything coming from the executive is in the interest of Nigerian.
Okay,
and
Mr. Anene.
to it, when a man...
Mr. Just a minute, just a moment.
That was rejected in 8th Assembly.
Mr. Anene, just a moment. We'll get to some of those issues you have raised, but I'd like to take up Mr. Otemo on this, because you mentioned sections 60 and 89 of the Constitution. And, you know, Mr. Otemo, looking at those sections, do you think they are relevant in this case?
Well, Section 80 is not relevant here. Section 89, yes, Section 89 is relevant. Section 88 and 89 is relevant. Now, yes, I agree that the Constitution gives the National Assembly the powers to make their rules that binds their proceedings, no doubt. Section 88 now gave the National Assembly the power to investigate, to inquire into any issue, any activity. And it's an I agree with my brother Anene here. It is an investigative power that is given to the National Assembly. Section 89 went further to also explain that they can extract evidence from anyhow they want. I agree. What's the mistake in this whole issue was that Mr. Keyamo was invited not to face an investigative hearing, but to come for an interactive hearing, which in the law is not provided for. There's nothing in the law that allows for interactive hearing. However, the National Assembly can invite anybody for interactive hearing, and on the decision of that person, he can appear before them for interaction, which was what they claimed they wanted to do. Now, if it is really investigative hearing, the next thing that should happen is that, how do you conduct investigation in this way? Do you conduct investigation in secret? Now, you have accused somebody. I think he got it somehow wrong. He's referring to the question asked by distinguished Senator Betty. That is not the issue that was going into private hearing. Before Betty raised that question, other persons in the panel, including the ND director, had made some statements which suggest which are accusations against the person of Festus Keyamo, suggesting that he's a corrupt person, that he has hijacked a project, that is not following due process, that is not following the laws. That accusation has been made before the camera. And then Betty now went further to ask questions. After asking questions, you say they should withdraw the camera. He should not respond. He wasn't going into the executive hearing to respond to only Betty's questions. No. Accusations have been made. So you would have allowed him to explain himself also before the camera. If you wanted an executive hearing, a secret hearing, from the word go, they would have allowed cameras in. Now they allow cameras in the middle of the football match. You want to shift the goalpost and say, no, the camera should leave. No sane Nigeria who knows his what, we want to allow that. And then do you even do investigative hearing in secret? I said no, because the person that they are even accusing, which is the person of Festus Keyamo that they are accusing that is corrupt in this case as a hijack project, is the defendant in this case. He's saying, I want the whole world to see the investigation. That's the person you are accusing that is corrupt. Maybe you that is the investigator is saying, no, we don't want to go open. Let's do it secret. So in that regard, who will you think or feel? Who will you, in the mind of the reasonable man, who is corrupt in this case? I'm not saying anybody is corrupt in this case. But
okay. Let me bring Ms. Anene. So, Ms. Anene,
he would have been allowed to express himself.
Just hang on. We'll hear you.
Give response to those accusations before the cameraman.
Okay, so Ms. Anene, what he's saying is that the end justifies the means here. And so that could suffice in this case.
You see, Chamberlain, I don't think my learned friend here got everything correct. It was the conduct, the abysmal conduct of Festus Keyamo, his rudeness that led National Assembly members to call for executive session.
No.
If he had conducted himself very well,
no.
If he had conducted himself in a way and a manner expected of an honorable minister of Federal Republic of Nigeria, they wouldn't have called for executive session. They did not just call for executive session because they are shielding certain facts from the public. That is not correct. It is not correct. What happened was this. The NDE representative said there are steering committees. He only knew about 8 persons. How did Festus Keyamo choose the other person? Remain to be seen. He has not explained this into Nigerians. And believe you me, Section 88 of 1999 Constitution empowered the National Assembly to conduct proceedings in a manner that will expose corruption, wastage, and inefficiency. This 774,000 jobs, is it not a waste? Some people will go to sweep some people go and sweep road and collect 60,000 naira in 3 months. Is it not a waste? It's a waste for Nigerian economy. This money would have been channeled into a proper place that will give Nigerians what we want, like the place of health and education. There is COVID-19, and these people want to spend over 50 billion naira on 3 months' job. And that's why we're talking about it. When they employ people in National Assembly, do they talk about it? When they employ people in FRS, do they talk about it? When they employ people in CPN,
just one moment.
Do they talk about it? When they employ people
just one moment, Mr. Nene. Just one moment. Just one moment. We've got into the meat of the matter now. I'd like Mr. Otemu to also, respond to that, because I'm just wondering as well, well, we are talking about the legality or morality of the issue. How about the issue, the subject matter itself? Well, you've heard Mr. Anene, you've heard his own perspective of the real issue, the controversial, the 774,000 jobs that Mr. President promised, which is now a controversy in the National Assembly. So how do you respond to some of the things that Mr. Anene just mentioned?
Yes, the 774,000 persons to be engaged for a period of 3 months and be paid 20,000 naira per month, those people are Nigerians. They are not foreigners. And so whatever money you spend on Nigerians, particularly within this period that we are having serious economic challenges, if you are able to pull out 1,000 persons from each local government to say you are empowering them with that kind of amount, though small, I feel it's small, but to a large extent, it will raise some persons from the level of living that they are to a higher level. They can now, after the project, get 60,000 naira to start little business for themselves. So this is the issue. To say all monies must go into health sector, if somebody does not eat, he will be sick too. And at the end of the day, he's going to the health sector you are talking about. So by way of even also decongesting the health sectors, it's good to put monies in the pockets of people, of your citizens. In America, during the COVID-19, you saw what America did. So much money was given to citizens. Europe, other countries gave monies to citizens to help them live, at least let them have something to eat. And in this case, those boys, because those youth, those boys and girls that would have done this project would have used that money to empower themselves to a higher level than the level they were before the project came. So to say that project is not proper, to say that project is not relevant, I totally disagree. As much as health sector is relevant, as much as education is relevant, as much as infrastructure is important, the lives of people, the well-being of the citizen is paramount. It's also
all right,
Mr.
Otemu, let me take this back to one moment, just one moment. Let me take it back to Mr. Anene. Now, Mr. Anene, for all intents and purposes, the president made this promise, and it's only fair that the president should keep his word, and consequently, this process has begun. The interest of the National Assembly is that, look, we want to ensure that our constituents really do benefit from this. Is there anything wrong in that, really? Is there anything wrong in the members of the National Assembly saying, look, let's understand what this whole process is about. If necessary, let's make some recommendations.
Yeah, let me agitate the mind of Nigerians a bit. When Mr. President made that promise of generating that kind of amount of job, it is not this kind of job. It is demeaning. It is demeaning for Mr. President to promise this kind of ad hoc job. It's a casual job. That is not what we needed. Now, if you are staying in Maraba, for instance, if you are staying in Nyanya in Abuja, and you are employed to go and sweep streets in Maitama, how much are you going to spend on transportation every day to and fro? When you take out this amount, the 20,000 is gone. That is why I said it is needless, it is waste. If you are staying in Oworosake in Lagos or staying in Ojuelegba in Lagos and you are employed to sweep streets in Ireland, how much are you going to spend in a month? At the end of the day, you will borrow money to pay for transportation. It is ridiculous. That is my take on this. If they want to create job in the real sense of job creation, that is not the way to go. You don't just take up people to go and sweep streets and start paying them 20,000 naira in 3 months. That is 60,000 naira. At the end of the day, they borrow money to augment their transport fare. That is the whole thing about this. If Mr. President promised jobs, yes, there is a way to go about it. And it should be carried along. There should be a policy document. This is the expectation. This is how people will be recruited. You know, I don't want to go into names that are part of the steering committee because they are Nigerians. But look at the names that are part of the steering committee.
Just hang on, Mr.
Is it for political patronage?
The thing is this, the National Assembly hasn't come to that conclusion, so these are your perspectives. But let me move on to Ms. Otemu. Now that the National Assembly has suspended this process and saying, look, we'd rather even speak to the substantive minister, so do they have the powers? Isn't the purpose now going to be defeated as a result of this back and forth and misunderstanding amongst themselves?
Well, in my view, I believe that the National Assembly and the Honorable Minister will at some point come to a roundtable and discuss this matter in a more harmonious way to see how they can go on with this project, because the project is very important. One, when Anene was talking about somebody living in Yanyan and going to Maitama to do the work and transport fare, the government is employing people from every local government. And in every local government, you have 1,000 persons, which means every community will be represented. Now, you will not be taken from your community to another community to go and work. So you are not even paying a dime for transportation. So that whole 60,000 goes to you to enable you do business. So because I think Nigeria, some persons are getting this whole program wrong. You are not employing somebody from one local government and sending to another local government. You are not employing somebody from one community and sending to another community to go and work. There will be no transportation here. You will work within the environment, within a place where it's trackable. And that's just the gospel truth. And so now coming back to whether the National Assembly has the power to suspend the work. Well, I feel the only person who have the sole power to take decision with respect to this project is Mr. President. National Assembly's responsibility ought to come at a later time, not at this stage. It is at the stage of where the project has been executed or it's ongoing and something is wrong with it, they can call for investigation, but not at this point. What I feel, yes, I agree, the National Assembly ought to be carried along because they represent the people. They are representatives of the people, no doubt. And so their interest, because this is all about political interest, their political interest is also at stake here. So if they are talking about we should be accommodated, I will agree with them 100% that National Assembly members should be accommodated so that they too cannot be seen to have gone to Abuja to relax. Let them also be seen that they have also empowered people within their communities for their political relevance, for their political life.
All right.
To that extent, I agree.
Okay,
but to say they have the capacity to say the project should stop, I do not agree.
In other words, I mean, who knows, probably a political solution might be the way they'll sort this out amongst themselves at the end of the day. But Mr. Nene, yes, let me bring you in on this. In addition to your response, if you have any, from what Mr. Otemu has said, in the interest of Nigerians who perhaps may not get the true picture and everybody else who's watching to allay their minds and ensure that, look, there's no such underhand or corrupt tendencies or practices or intentions, as it were, shouldn't the National Assembly, moving forward, conduct whatever other proceedings they have about this matter with whomsoever in public, in the full glare of the cameras?
Yeah, let me also react to what he said. I carefully use Nyanya as example in Abuja here. Nyanya is in Amak, Abuja Municipal Area Council. You don't expect somebody staying in Maitama to come and be sweeping street for you. You get somebody from Nyanya to do it. I'm from Onsuka local government in Enugu State. You have border communities like Okuje, Okutu, Ibagwane, Alone, and so on and so forth. For you to transport yourself from this border community, from this hinterland to Onsuka local government headquarters, you must spend more than 500 naira on daily basis. and are expected to be paid 20,000 naira at the end of the day. Is it not waste? How much are you going to save from this stipend that you will use at the end of the exercise to help yourself? It's just money for the boys. They just want to siphon this money. It's corruption, it's waste, it's inefficiency in working in the street. Let us call it the way it is. Now, the whole thing about whether National Assembly can stop it, even Festus Keyamo said nobody, a minister, that is a junior minister, said nobody can stop him except Mr. President. That is wrong. That's an insult to our constitution. Our elected representative, those who are representing us at the National Assembly, elected like Mr. President, and somebody who is given an appointment, a junior minister, who said nobody will stop him except Mr. President. These are the people that have the power of appropriation. If they refuse to appropriate 1 kobo to it, the whole thing will fizzle out. And that is, this thing should sink into his ear. He said, nobody can stop me except Mr. President. The Nationals, I want to tell Nigerians, I want to put it to him that the National Assembly can stop the entire project and nothing will happen. But the only thing is that this National Assembly is beggarly. They are just naive. I'm very, very sorry to say this. Because of the way they
could you respond to the question then? Should they then conduct the proceedings in public?
You see, like I said, go and read section 60.
That
they
notwithstanding,
can conduct it in secret. It is
that notwithstanding, the question is in the interest of transparency.
They have the power.
Yes, that may be the case, as your colleague may have agreed with you, but in the interest of transparency, shouldn't they conduct it in public? After all, they all say nobody has anything to hide.
That's the point.
In the interest of transparency, Festus Keyamo should tell us how he came about that steering committee. What was the criteria?
That's not the question. Should the National Assembly, the joint committee,
from this project?
That's not the question. Should the joint committee conduct it in public then?
I didn't get your question.
The question is, in the interest of the public, all of those sections notwithstanding, shouldn't they then conduct the sittings in public since they all say nobody has anything to hide?
You see, the Nigerians are funny. I don't understand this. You keep on jettisoning our constitution to please somebody. If that happens, what it means, and it is danger, it portends a grave danger to our democracy, that somebody will go to National Assembly and impose on them the way and manner they will conduct their proceedings. The makers of 1999 Constitution considered the morality and the interest of justice in it and said these people should be given power to determine their proceedings. It is the interest of justice that will implement our constitution to the letter. Nobody should go to National Assembly and need to tell them how to conduct their proceedings. If they did not conduct the proceedings,
Ms. Anene, you've not quite answered. Should it be conducted in public or private? But you know what? Let's round off with Mr. Otemu here, because there's been a lot of controversy also around the state committee. I mean, the people that make up members of a state committee. Was there any, underhand dealings in that area? What does the act of the NDE say regarding that, for example, that gives backing to the constitution of a committee?
Thank you very much, my brother. Section 16 of the NDE Act, Section 16 sub 1 of the NDE Act, gives the minister the sole power, the sole power to appoint such committees, special committees of these nations, and the sole power to appoint them is given by the Constitution, by the Act, by the NDE Act, to appoint. And nobody can question that power. He has a discretion. So how he exercises that discretion is entirely within his purview to do. So for him to say he has to consult this, no.
I didn't say anybody should consult anybody. I said the criteria he used.
So whatever criteria he used is within his personal discretion. Nobody can question it. It is the minister's discretion to appoint by virtue of Section 16 sub 1. And then he said National Assembly are beggarly. I don't agree with that position that National Assembly members are beggarly. That they disagree with the minister on how the project will go does not make the National Assembly members beggarly also. They also have a position to say they have their interest to be protected. They are politicians.
We need to anchor at that point.
All over the world, even in America,
thank you
everybody
both.
protects his interest.
Otemu and Emmanuel Anene, legal practitioners. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us today. We're back in a moment on the show. Join us again.
All right, let's turn our attention to intellectual property. Since we moved online, everything is now virtual. Books, music, videos. I just learned recently that they sell pictures. how do you even manage all of these issues? Physical, virtual, I don't know, but let's talk to those who experience it, and of course, a lawyer as well. We'd like to begin with Arese Ugu, who is the founder of Smart Money Africa, runs a personal finance blog which caters to the African millennial, and author of 2 best-selling books. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll also be having a legal practitioner. Well, tell us this. Are you having, you are online, you blog on finance and all of that. What are the issues that you think need to be dealt with as far as intellectual property is concerned?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me on. My name is Arese Ugu. I am the author and publisher of 2 books, The Smart Money Woman and The Smart Money Tribe. So they're financial education books that I published for African millennial women, and they're self-published in Nigeria. Let me just show you the difference between my book that I self-published and printed in Nigeria and the one that I bought my own book on the streets of Lagos for 1,000 naira. Now, the cost of production in Nigeria is high, I understand that, and many people feel like they can't afford the book. However, when you buy pirated copies of books, you give less incentive for Nigerian authors to write or publish books because we cannot monetize our skills, because the piracy dilutes the market with fake copies, and we're basically left on the lurch. So my book, I created all the buzz for it on social media, and women were really into it. We're turning the book into a TV series. However, they're now selling it on the streets of Lagos and Abuja and even Accra, which gives you less of an incentive to invest in publishing in Nigeria. Now, the issue with intellectual property from African creatives, or stealing intellectual property from African creatives, is unfortunately when you see international books like Michelle Obama's books on the streets, is bad, but they've already benefited from the structures in place in America to be able to monetize their books. So they've already made their money. But when you do it to an African author who has had to go through several hurdles because there's no infrastructure in place to be able to help us distribute and scale our books. So we have to basically be creative with the way that we distribute. So I've had to sell my books on a Health Plus, Ebano, supermarkets. Think creatively about where my target market goes to go and shop ordinarily, and leverage on those distribution channels. House of Tara, and it's been very amazing. But when you put in all that work trying to create your own distribution channels, because they're not huge bookstores or national bookstores like in America or England, it poses a problem when people actually steal your intellectual property and they can get away with it. Now, there are piracy laws in Nigeria, but they're not easily enforced. I've spent
just one moment, Ms. Ugu, before we get to the legal angle of it. Is there anything, because I know many authors, complain about the cost of production in Nigeria and all of that, but has any finding been made to see a way of reducing that cost of production, so at least one way or another we can reduce, if not eliminate, the possibility of this piracy?
So one of the ways that we look at doing that is going on platforms like BAMBooks, where people can read the book digitally and pay just as little as 900 naira subscription fee so that they can read unlimited books. So platforms like that help us, but we need to help to elevate them by creating awareness, by telling the Nigerian public that when you rip off an African creative, you are giving less incentive for them to continue to write books or invest in the publishing industry. So when you elevate or create awareness for platforms like BAMBooks, you're telling them, listen, if you want to read the book that badly and you can't afford the physical copy, you can read it on a digital platform that's affordable. So that way you're supporting the authors as opposed to ripping off their work or supporting the pirates.
I'm also quite interested in that other book, the pirated one you have with you right there. Interested in the sense that, you must have done some findings. These books don't just pop up. Someone went through the process of printing this book, putting it out on the streets to be sold to you in this case. And a lot of other people that just go to bus parks, they're waiting in the bus and someone comes with a book. This is RSS book, get it, you learn how to make money and whatnot. And they just feel they're buying your book. So, I mean, did you try to find out how this happened? There must have been some phone number or stuff on it. What did you find out?
There's no phone number, but it's from the investigations that we've been doing so far, it's definitely on a very large scale. There are people who are actually investing a lot of money to pirate the books, because there are people on Instagram selling the pirated copies and even tagging me. And when we called some of them, they said, oh, we're going to a depot on the mainland to collect it from their supplier. So it seems like it's a large-scale operation, but there's a problem sort of like pinpointing who these people are. But they've spent a lot of money and time. People are tagging me, and that's the beauty of social media, is it gives you a full feedback mechanism, because when people are buying it, they're tagging me and saying, oh, I saw this in Tejuo show, I just bought it, I'm so glad I finally gotten to buy this book. Oh, I bought it in Aja traffic. Oh, I bought it in Abuja traffic. Oh, I bought it in Accra. How did they get to Accra during this pandemic? It's unbelievable.
Oh, this is it's really sad, and it's not something that should be encouraged. But the thing about this is, I'm just wondering if people were not there to buy some of these pirated copies, these other people wouldn't even be in business. From your perspective, do you think that there is that? How should people approach these kind of things? Because some of these people, when you ask them, they tell you, well, look, I didn't know. But there are other people who deliberately engage in buying those pirated copies as well, irrespective of what people may tell them. How do you think we should be approaching this to ensure that, look, we get off those who feed off those pirated copies and ensure that people who actually do own it get the proceeds from their hard work?
I think, first of all, it starts with creating awareness for how you're hurting the author. For example, I spent 1.5 years writing my first book. I spent 1 year and 9 months writing my second book. And I've used my money to self-publish it in Nigeria with no help, from anywhere else. So if you imagine the kind of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into trying to scale an idea that basically came from your head, you should have some empathy, right? When you think, oh, it's cheaper, so I'll buy the pirated copy. But please think about the work that went into creating the quality that you enjoy so much. And I'm tempted to say that I want to stop writing because it's not lucrative, or it won't be lucrative anymore if this persists. But I would like to think that the women who have benefited, from my books will become the advocates against piracy and tell other people, don't buy the books on the streets. Please don't WhatsApp the books to your friend digitally or send them via emails, because you're actually hurting the creatives behind these things.
It's a job of work for authors and the authorities to see what they can do. You've written a number of books. Did you anticipate this happening? And what about the relevant authorities, the police, those agencies? Have you reached out to them? What impression do you have of what they can do about it? Do they feel helpless?
I do feel helpless. I've had a few conversations with some lawyers, some people who actually focus on intellectual property. However, it does seem dim. The lawyers themselves are not confident that this is something that you can actually stop. When I've asked to a few people about the take of the police, they've said that you have to have money to mobilize them and go and ransack the places. And it's upsetting that you put in the work, you have the copyrights, you did all the right things, and people can rip you off in broad daylight, and there's no regulation or help from the government to say to stop it. So I'm still in the process of trying to reach out to the Nigerian Copyright Commission, but if anyone from there or anyone who can do anything to help me stop this, I'll be very glad.
Is there any way that one can bring down the cost of producing those books in Nigeria? Is there any way that can be explored so that we can run because if that was possible, we can run the pirates themselves out of business. Is there any way to bring down the cost of producing?
The cost of producing physical books will be a little bit tough because obviously we import a number of things, a number of components that you use to print. But we do try to keep the cost as minimal as possible. However, I think that in the future, what will help to reduce the cost is technology. So technology like what Bambooks is creating to make it more accessible to everyone. So like the music industry, they had this issue as well. But when the technology to distribute their music became available to everyone, it became a moot point for the pirates. So if we create awareness and an enabling environment for technology like Bambooks to exist and help to promote African authors, it can help in the future to reduce the cost of production of books.
Right. So obviously this is a huge challenge. I can imagine how you feel. I mean, having put in all that hard work into this book. Now, a lot of people will go out now, I mean, haven't seen you, would want to get your book definitely. So what should they look out for? You find out that some bookstores, for example, actually have the fake copies of the books. And I mean, deep down, they think they actually have the real copy. So, I mean, you just showed us those two books. I honestly can't tell the difference, except I probably have to use some technology and all that. So as some form of action point, what should people do?
I think, first of all, try to buy directly from the author. Try to buy from verified platforms like, Amazon or Books, from bookstores that have, a good reputation. But I can imagine that it's difficult for you to tell the difference because if I'm really honest, unless I open the inside of the pirated book to see how shoddy the printing is, it's hard for me to tell. If I hadn't made the effort to print a hard copy versus a paperback, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So I can see how it will be difficult for the readers to tell the difference. But you know that you're buying something wrong when you're buying it on the streets.
Maybe the authorities. Yeah, so are you suggesting that the authorities might need to actually go out to the streets and maybe arrest these people that sell those books at those areas? Are you suggesting that too?
Most definitely, because that's their biggest distribution channel, being able to sell it in the streets to people who are in traffic, right? So they're almost improving the buyer's experience because they don't have to do anything. They just buy it, on the street. However, when you're buying pirated copies on the streets, you know that the books are fake. That's already a big sign. So yes, the government should go and arrest them because you can't be stealing someone's work and be doing it in broad daylight and getting away with it.
Yes, we have to thank you very much, Arese Ugwu, author of 2 best-selling books, Smart Money Woman and Smart Money Tribe. Thank you so much for your time and all the best. Well, guys, this is actually quite touching. I remember a story told by Lagbaja, the musician. He said he bought his own work in traffic at Maryland.
Well, yeah, it's a tough ask and a job of work for people to do because, I mean, she says people are investing heavily in this. That means it's profitable. They've been doing it. They have the effrontery. They've done it. They've gotten away with it. So they feel they can do it again. And so, but if the police authorities now feel helpless,
that's a problem.
That's what
we have a copyright commission. I'm wondering, this is just one of those agencies that we're asking, okay, so what is being done about this? One way to eliminate this, because some will always prefer to read physical books. They would rather read physical books than strain their eyes, going digital. So if we can bring down the costs, create an industry to bring down the cost of production in Nigeria to the barest minimum, because that thing is quite costly.
And importantly, too, we have a role to play.
Yeah.
Because those who see these things, they do them not knowing perhaps, I know ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
Obviously.
You know, but people use other people's intellectual property without regard for the necessary rules.
That's
and
another way.
procedures.
Especially because, you know, there are laws actually guiding IP in Nigeria. There's the Copyright Act, Patent and Design Act. I can go on. And if we start seeing this as theft, like real theft, stealing, you know, maybe armed robbery, but not armed, but robbery basically, then it probably would change our perspective. But it is actually stealing. So we should start looking at people that engage in these things as thieves, ideally. I think that would make sense.
So the question then will be, are we really helpless? Is the law helpless? What can the law do? What can the authorities do? What should they do? What have they not been doing? How should we approach these things moving forward? So these are some of the issues that, yes, you just find that...
It'll be good to speak with an intellectual property lawyer and expert who will be able to guide us in that regard, because it's not only in books. In fact, publishing is perhaps even worse hit. Music had that problem also in the 80s into the 90s, where you know, then they used to produce vinyls, very, very expensive to produce vinyls, and then cassettes, and then CDs. You invest in all of that, and then only to find that right beside you, that was where the Alaba, you know, whatever, idea came up. It was very, very popular at that time. And the police, indeed, at that time, would go to Alaba, raid their markets, take them out of, run them out of business. It hasn't stopped.
Until some disruptive technologies came up.
And speaking about that, we need thinkers now. It's COVID pandemic. That's the era we are globally now. And we're talking about opening schools. So you can then imagine if you're going to move those books online, we need to think and be sure that, look, if people's intellectual property is going to face this kind of challenge, you can be rest assured that people will be discouraged to do that. And if people are discouraged to put that in, then we won't have quality literature with which students can learn. So how do we proceed with that?
Yeah, so we have a property expert who is with us right now to give us some perspective of this. Oguche Digbolo is a legal practitioner and copyright lawyer. Thank you so much for your time. Well, as far as copyright laws are concerned, are they too weak to deal with the issues?
No, I don't think so. They are not too weak to deal with the issue.
So how
Seriously, the thing is, Nigerians have not yet started believing in their intellectual property rights majorly. The awareness is poor. I will not lie to you about that. It is poor, especially when it comes to literature. At least the music, videos, cinematography are doing good, but literature, it's bad. You know, we have carried this culture over time, right from the university, right from secondary schools, where we go, we photocopy notes, you know, original works of other people, we just go photocopy them. So this tradition has followed some people over time. So they need serious awareness to make them understand that, okay, these are original works of people. This is just like you buy a physical property, you know, you get a property somewhere in Ikeja, you know, you value that property. That is how your intellectual property should also be valued. But so many people don't look at it from that angle, you know.
What do you say? What then do you say to those who actually look in that direction? The musicians, the authors. We just spoke with one who is lamenting that she bought her own copyrighted book on the streets. What can she do? Because, I mean, it's quite frustrating, you'd agree.
Exactly. We have to actually toughen your own personal security, you know, toughen your own personal security as it is. Once you do your job, there are other means of, you know, what they call advanced security when it comes to literature. Maybe your branding, your cover page, and all those stuff. Then if it's an ebook, you know, sometimes you can zip it. There are other means, there are other mediums you can use in protecting your work, your intellectual property work, from these bootleggers or these pirates, definitely.
Have you handled any case yourself concerning this before?
Yes, several cases have come up.
Or some of them.
But the truth is, when you make your clients understand that, okay, we have to put all this into place, they begin to, you know, most people feel the lawyers are the ones who are causing the whole issues or trying to extend the whole issues. No.
Good. Would you mind telling us some of them? Let's be sure that they are saying the truth.
You say?
Would you mind sharing some of them so that we know their perspective and why they say what they say?
Yes, but definitely, you know, my client details and names should be kept private.
Names, just
There's this case
experiences
we have
and
to
measures.
put down Alaba International Market. Huh?
No names, just measures and procedures.
Okay, like there was a time we have to take policemen to Alaba International Market, where a copy of a song that my client is supposed to drop a week after was already in a mixtape in Alaba already. You say?
Go ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you. Could you relate it to how does it relate to, particularly when it's got to do with literature?
If you go down to this market, you see a lot of literatures, a lot being pirated. So these markets are identifiable. It's not as if they don't know this market. The agencies know this market. Even the commission knows this market. So go there. Once you take these guys out of that market, definitely you stop piracy to an extent.
So would it be right to say that if one buys a book from the streets, chances are, and to what percentage, that they will be fake or, you know, pirated copy?
That chance is very slim. We must be honest. We must be very honest with that. That chance is very slim. Like you buy the book from the public market and you're expected to know the original. That is why it now depends on the author himself to do a lot of work, promote and influence or make people understand that, okay, this book, this is how you get to know the original, this is how you have to know the authentic work, you know, the packaging, maybe a little bit of security inside the book, or during the course of the printing. The printers have a lot of work to also do there, trying to secure the jobs.
Let me understand your point. So you're saying if people buy books from the streets, you will perhaps 98% chance of you buying a pirated copy of somebody's work.
That is honest. That is very honest, sir. Very honest.
But there are those who also say that some bookshops, 95%. Does that then, you know, does that leave out the bookshops? Because some say, look, even some bookshops too sell pirated copies of books.
You know, that is true. That is true, but not the major ones we know. That's why credibility comes in here to play, business credibility. Over time, we have seen bookshops that, like if you go to some bookshops at Igboshere, where the High Court is, you hardly see pirated books. Reason be that you know how most of these bookshops are owned by lawyers and people.
Final note.
So
sorry for butting in. On a final note, we've seen the role of disruptive technology when it comes to music. For publishing also, do you think this might be the way out if we really establish disruptive technologies online? Do you think that will solve this issue to a large extent?
It will go a very long way solving this issue. A very long way solving this issue.
We have to thank you very much, Oguche Digbolo, a legal practitioner and copyright lawyer. Thank you so much for your time and perspectives this morning. Please keep doing what you're doing. All right, we're back in a moment to take on other issues. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Now, with that controversy about the 774,000 jobs making the rounds, then the perspective by NECA that as a result of this COVID, a huge percentage of businesses are no longer there. With job losses, the unemployment figure soaring as we speak, there are definitely challenges about jobs creation and the dynamics. Well, Jide Ogunsowo, our data analyst, is here to talk to us about the job creation dynamics, the unemployment figures. You've looked through some of these things. It's something that stares on the face, and COVID-19 doesn't make it any easier. What did you find?
So we can look at it from different perspectives, but it's good to look at the beginning of where all of this started. And it started from 17th March 2015. A tweet from the president-to-be then, at Mbuari, hashtag APC for change, hashtag jobs, jobs, jobs. hashtag Chamberlain, 3 million jobs per year. And that's from the president's handle on the 17th of March 2015. So we have that on record. Well, I'd like to start from a slightly different perspective, Chamberlain, this morning. I've got 5 suites here, but I'd like to give you 2 options. Option 1 is if I told you that you could either have 4 suites and I gave Kayode only 1 suite, option 1. Option 2 is you rather go for no suites for both of you. Which of these options will you take?
Well, in the light of COVID.
Wow. Let me see. Which option would you take?
I'll just watch.
You're on the spot. You have to take a decision.
Yeah, well, I just have to watch and see. I'll internalize it first and decide how it goes.
Kayode, what will you do?
I'll just create a third option, split it.
You see, that's the challenge we have with jobs, really. It's hard to hold the government to its promises. Nobody really wants to come out to say, this is exactly how we said we'll do it. You don't want to pick.
But we didn't promise. I didn't promise I was going to pick any suite. So how can they hold me?
But you know, with jobs, a lot of Nigerians really want to understand first is we've had market money, trader money. So it's to first of all look at how can we understand and simplify the job creation process. And that looks at the social investment program. So I'd like to start from that. Let's take a look at understanding the social investment program.
Okay.
And if we look at that, there are 4 components to it. The first is we have the homegrown school feeding program, the conditional cash transfer, the government empowerment and enterprise scheme, which has the market money, trader money, and the farmer money. And finally, the NPower. So I'd like to look at each of these things by looking at the good news and the bad news. The good news about the homegrown school feeding program, Kayode, is that currently the government is feeding more than 10 million school children. Yes, they are not yet feeding all the primary school children, but they are feeding over 10 million children. Now, the bad news is the number 1 challenge parents are having with that program is the quality of food their children receive. So the problem isn't just the quality of education at the public primary schools. We are looking at the challenge of the quality of food that these children receive. That's the first. The second is the conditional cash transfer. There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is we now have a database of more than 11 million Nigerians on that social register. The bad news is we've got 100 million people that are poor. And so, yes, families are receiving a lot of monies, a lot of stipends, perhaps not sufficient, but the bad news is many more families are still poor. On the government enterprise scheme, which is the third leg of the social investment program, that government enterprise scheme is where you have the controversies of the farmer money, market money, trader money. And a lot of Nigerians are asking, where are the beneficiaries? So the good news, again, on that platform is that, yes, we have 2.3 million people that have received some sort of interest-free loan, businesses that have really been supported by the government. So that's good news, 2.3 million people. The bad news is we have 42 million micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And so you have many more that are not getting the benefits of this. Now, on the NPower is perhaps the most important and has been the most successful of the 4 social investment programs. On the NPower, we've also got good news, and you have bad news. The good news on the NPower is you have more than 500,000 people that have been beneficiaries of this job creation program. Each of these persons have been spread across all the 774 local governments. That's a lot of good news. The bad news is, yes, more than 500,000 people are beneficiaries of the NPower program, but you have a country where 40 million people are unemployed. And so the summary of the government social investment program is taking a bucket of water and pouring it into a river.
And besides, all of these schemes, they've got their challenges. The homegrown school feeding program, many wonder, look, how do they say they're going to be feeding people who are at home already? How are you going to locate them to feed them? Some question the rationale behind that. And then the conditional cash transfer, we heard the lawmakers speak about that register in the first place, credibility or otherwise of that register. And then the NPower, 500,000. They say they're going to lay off 500,000. Some are complaining of not having received their pay. So all of this, does that culminate into why you say having a basket?
You know, the first is the federal government is acting as Father Christmas. And if you've ever been to their Papa amusement park, even at December, you will know that Father Christmas runs out of gifts. The federal government cannot solve all of these problems. The evidence shows that the states have to take on more responsibility for even the social investment program. Oh yes, there are concerns over the transparency of the names on the social register has to be cleaned up. But if you have the central government trying to create a social register of about 10 million school children, of about 100 million people that are poor, then there will always be concerns about how you want to manage it. So yes, the federal government should offload a lot of its fatherly responsibilities to the states and focus on other issues like the borders, immigration, security. I talked about the NPower. Yeah. The evidence shows that NPower has really been successful across a lot of areas.
Okay. What do you mean by successful, really?
Okay. Should we talk about the success of the NPower and the challenges, or we should look at the millions of
Can
jobs?
we merge that?
Okay. With the NPower, what it has done is it's the only program we have that the government has run that has beneficiaries across all the 774 local governments. That is the fact. The challenge is the beneficiaries of the NPower need to move off the program and stop relying on the government so that more people that are waiting to join the program can also come on board. There are three things that makes the NPower very unique. It's that the first is it includes graduates from tertiary institutions. The second is it also includes non-graduates that are waiting online. So students that are writing German, they've even gone back to trying to see how they can bring in primary school children, which is good. Now, the third is among all the social investment programs, it's the NPower that talks about innovation hubs. And there seems to be a general agreement that innovation is the future, Chamberlain. And so while each of these programs has its challenges, we've seen a lot of success from the NPower, even though there still has to be a lot to be done. But I'd like us to look at, we need to understand the challenge we have with jobs first, looking at the numbers. And the numbers shows that there are 40 million, Chamberlain, 40 million Nigerians who are unemployed. Wow. Now, if you look at it from a regional perspective, we'll see that number one is the South-South. We have more than 8 million Nigerians who are unemployed and underemployed in the South-South. And then we look at the Northwest. We also have millions of Nigerians unemployed in the Northwest, and then we see the North-Central. In all, here's what is common among all the regions, if we carefully look at that, and that is every region in Nigeria has over 5 million people that are either unemployed and underemployed. But it gets even worse, Chamberlain. These numbers that we currently are looking at are the numbers as at the third quarter of 2018. In other words, Chamberlain, in the last 642 days, we have got no unemployment figures for this country. Here's why it is very important. For economic growth and progress, countries like England, the United States, Germany, release their unemployment figures every month. One of the ways we've been able to fight COVID is by we're releasing the data and number of people that have gotten COVID every day.
Gives us an assessment.
So today, there's nobody that can confidently beat their chest to say that these are the number of Nigerians that are unemployed. Because the 40 million unemployed and underemployed that we are quoting goes back to the third quarter.
So we should treat this joblessness the way we're approaching this data that we released for the virus.
Exactly. So let's look at the joblessness virus to be able to look at another perspective of what is going on. And a lot of times people say foreign direct investment, investment. But the evidence, Chamberlain, shows that the foreign investors are really not concerned about creating jobs in Nigeria. They're interested in making profits. And if you look at that, the evidence shows that in the last 5 years, and in the last 5 years, I'm talking about all of 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19, we've seen $68 billion come into Nigeria. $68 billion worth of foreign direct investment coming to Nigeria in the last 5 years. The challenge is the most important sector, the sector that creates most of the jobs in Nigeria, the agricultural sector, has received only $1 billion. You heard me right. Only $1 billion out of the $68 billion that's come into this country. Most of that money goes into stocks, the banking sector, finance. Very insignificant amount of money goes into those sectors that creates jobs. In other words, the future of Nigeria really isn't about relying on foreign direct investment. It's about domestic direct investment.
And how has that been doing? Because, I mean, so I hear agriculture creates most jobs. And then there's also the entertainment sector, which actually creates a lot of jobs next to agriculture. So if you say we need to look inwards, that's been the buzzword or the buzz phrase now. Let's look inwards in terms of consumption. Do we really have that capacity to say we can push these sectors?
Capacity in terms of does the government have enough money to support the sectors? The evidence shows that revenue is dipping. So we need to look at letting this private sector companies and organizations make the success themselves. So the government needs to move away from promising jobs because the government cannot employ people.
So they can create the environment.
They can create the environment. You know, the challenge we have today, Chamberlain, is every month, and I'm talking about every 30 days, and an additional 400,000 Nigerians are looking for jobs. An additional 400,000 Nigerians every month come into the labor market. And so even though the N-Power has created support for 500,000 people, more than 500,000 people, it still is a pinch of salt compared to the challenge we face.
But if you look at that virus, which you were going to speak about, that joblessness virus, the dynamics there, because perhaps this might even help the government target in terms of if they want to come up with certain policies to move that sector forward. You say here that you found that 78% of Nigerians work with micro enterprises.
Yeah, so that is where most of Nigerians work, micro enterprise. And by micro enterprise, we're talking about organizations that employ less than 10 people. And so, arithmetically, you will feel that since micro enterprises create most of the employment, the government should try and find a way to support more micro enterprises. That makes sense. But here's the challenge with micro enterprises. The organization that creates most of the jobs in the country. The challenge is more than half of the micro enterprises we have in Nigeria are being run by individuals that have, at best, a primary school leaving certificate. Statement of fact.
Is that a challenge in itself? Because, I mean, if they can create jobs in some sense, then is that a challenge?
So you can create jobs, but they can't grow jobs because of limited knowledge. So the challenge is you have micro enterprises that a lot of Nigerians own and also employ some people, but they are being run and managed by individuals that have, at the best, a primary school certificate. More than half of micro enterprises have, at the very best, CEOs that have only primary school certificates.
You know, there's always that conversation. Is it school knowledge you're talking about or, you know, business education generally? Because some people might just have that primary school, but they understand business. They've learned about business. They've, you know, been tutored by the best. So are you talking about school knowledge or that, you know, business education?
School and business education. You know, one of the challenges micro enterprises face is they want to raise capital. And to raise capital, you need to come up with a business plan. And if you are trying to bring in investors, how can you come up with a good business plan if you don't have that school knowledge? How do you create your balance sheet, your cash flow, your P&L, your operations plan, on and on? How do you make your business attractive to even the other domestic investors? How do you get a loan from a bank if you are not able to come up with a good pitch deck or a good presentation? So that is the challenge. A lot of micro enterprises, and the government needs to also invest in other skills that owners of micro enterprises can use
and
to
perhaps
build their business.
Maybe one other thing that might help is having looked at that figure and see, okay, if these are the people who are running these businesses, what was the curriculum? What do they teach them at that level in school related to business? So maybe we may need to tweak it a little more to address some of these things you talk about. How do you ensure that you keep your books? Because if anyone wants to give you some facility, they need to see your books and transparency.
Exactly.
They need to see some of those.
Yeah,
so if you
and
teach them those basics, then they can grow with it.
And it's the basics that the Empower scheme is trying to do. The homegrown school feeding program really doesn't create a lot of jobs. Yes, it provides children with meals, and then it has the value chain through small-scale farmers. Then we have the conditional cash transfer, which really isn't a job creation process. We move on to the market money and trader money, which assists families or assist businesses to keep jobs through loans. But the Empower, the innovation hubs, are being used as platforms to improve learning, to improve training, to improve skill development. And I think we've seen a lot of success, despite the challenges of fewer people wanting to leave, get off the line and allow new people to join the line. We've seen a lot of success there.
So that's the Empower, which you say 400 Nigerians,
400,000 Nigerians, yes. So the Empower has really created jobs. However, the challenge is the government isn't the answer to the problem. 400,000 people enter the job market every month in Nigeria.
So 400,000 people, right? There's been the talks about 774,000 people. So you've talked about the government being Father Christmas. Is this another Father Christmas thing coming up?
So the thinking about the 774,000 jobs is we have 774 local governments, Chamberlain. And so if we have 1,000 jobs in each local government, it brings up to 774,000. And that seems to be equal. The challenge is we do not have enough research to show that each local government, what are the needs really of each local government? And so you have some local governments, for instance, let's make it look this way, that some local governments need only 2,000 jobs. And so if you give them 1,000 jobs, you solve 50% of their problems. Some other local governments require 10,000 jobs. And so 1,000 jobs per local government is equality. The challenge is equity.
But we'll also need figures of the population of those local governments maybe to tell, how many people actually need those jobs. And we don't quite have that.
You need figures, but perhaps the most important thing is, which we've talked about, is we're talking about 1,000 jobs per local government, but we do not have the data on how many people are unemployed per local government. That is perhaps the most important one, because based on the unemployment figures per local government, we'll then be able to allocate jobs not only based on equality, but based on equity. And like I said, in the last 642 days, there has been no update to our unemployment records. The Statistician General, the National Bureau of Statistics, has come out to say they haven't done it intentionally. They require more funding from the government. The government have said they haven't done it intentionally. They require more funding from oil revenues. The oil revenue companies have said they haven't done it intentionally. They are waiting for crude oil prices to go up. The crude oil companies are saying they haven't done it intentionally. They are waiting for COVID.
So who's been collecting my money then? All the taxes. Where's it been going?
Back to your sweets. Will you take 4 sweets?
No, I'll give him all.
You give him all?
I'll give him all.
Thank you.
All right,
I'll
so there you go. Thank you for your thoughts, Jidego. So our data analysts. We're back in a moment and look at your comments as well. Stay with us. Welcome back. So our cameras are on the streets. So when you see them, stop. No, don't touch them. That's our social distancing. You need to observe it. Don't forget to put on your mask.
Yeah.
But you need to tell them, do you think it's safe to reopen schools now? And that's why we put up that poll question for you to go there. Go to our Twitter handle. There you go, as a live screenshot of that. And vote. Well, already we've got almost, how many? 800, over 700 votes?
Yeah, over 800 votes now.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. It's going back and forth now. You never can tell. Your decision, your vote may let someone an insight into how they need to do things moving forward. Because remember, they say we're working with statistics, science, and data to take decisions. So let them know what you think.
So we can add this to it because this is valuable data. You can see the question is simply, do you think it's safe to reopen schools now? Hashtag Sunrise Daily. Simple question. Yes, no, or indifferent. That's the poll question for you.
And it's really pretty simple. If we're going by science and data, well, this is data. We may not have the science.
And you see people putting up comments, what they think. They're not just voting. So tell us what you also think. So you vote and then put up your comment. Take a look at Matthew Shegun saying it's time to open schools, but we need adequate measures, well planned. But see this one from another person saying N-O, no, with 3 exclamation marks. That's coming from Hugo, and you know, a lot of other comments, really.
Before one more thing, so don't forget, parents, students, teachers, because you all will be involved in this. You have a role to play. Go ahead and vote. Let them know what you think. So it will continue on Monday, and then we'll let you know how everyone voted, for those who voted. I think we'll have time for one more thing. Okay, but let's take a look at the tweets first. Let's quickly go through some of your comments and how you responded to some of the issues that we spoke about. This first one coming through from Joseph
Shoremekun saying that thanks for the line of thought requesting the authorities to interrogate why more men contract and die of the virus than women. This may be a pointer to ending the scourge. Goes on to say our research institutions should explain the demographic spread of the virus.
Well, Alchino Kalito says, let us see how these lawmakers will handle the increase in the electricity tariff proposed. I always frown at the way they make certain dividends and rights look like privileges.
Well, Andrew Wilcox says, the senators have a dubious motive. Ooh, how do you know that? He says there's absolutely nothing wrong to conduct hearing in the public. I support Keyamo fully in the issue. In fact, the committee responsible for the hearing should be investigated. What about the laws, they say? Markwe?
Well, Professor Enakena is saying this 774,000 jobs in Broglio and vituperation shows the disconnect between the organs of government. Nigerians need these jobs. NAS and Keyamo must return to the trenches of negotiations before systemic disagreements scuttle the project.
Okay, well, now we have time for one more thing.
Can you give us the research work that has reached the final stage?
30 years of a research activity. We are still a young institution. But to be candid with you, we are making progress. For now, we have developed a technology to optimize kilichi production.
What you are telling us is just you are telling us stories. Is that the success story you are going to tell us after 33 years?
Need we say more? There you go. So much for technological advancements from Raw Material Research and Development Council. Well, there you go. That is the show today. Thank you all for watching and keep voting. We'll see you on Monday. I'm Chamberlain also.
The Sunrise Daily Now handle is there for you, so go there right now. I'm Kaido Kikiolu.
I'm talking about voting. Vote for safety. Keep safe. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful
Indeed, be responsible. Thank you for watching. I'm Mao Ogun Yusuf. Have a lovely weekend.